Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my May wrap up. So I thought that I did not do very good with reading this month. I don't know, this month has been a blur, and definitely in the first half of the month I was feeling very slumpy after I finished the Zodiac Academy series. I was just kind of like, what is reading? But I actually read, I'm pretty sure I have read the most books in a month that I have ever read this month. So I don't know what happened. The first half of the month was kind of rough, but then apparently the second half of the month I just went hard and was reading everything I could get my hands on. So I'm really happy about that. May was a great month for reading for me. After all, I discovered a new series, I reread some of my favorites, I discovered new beautiful standalones. So without further ado, let's just get straight into my May wrap up. All right, so I'm gonna try to go in order, but like, as I said, May was kind of a blur. I don't entirely remember like the exact order I read everything in, but I do know I started the month with these two books and they are responsible for sort of putting me in a reading slump, and that is Zodiac Academy 6 and 7. I did do an entire reading vlog on the full Zodiac Academy series, spoiler free. I will have that link down below. I'm going to have every reading vlog that I did that relates to the books I'm going to talk about linked in the description below, so if you want to watch my process. So I'll kind of just be quick about these, but Zodiac Academy 6, which is Fated Throne. This is where the series kind of took a little bit of a downturn for me. I still liked it. I gave it 4 stars, but I was pretty much giving every book in the series 5 stars at this point. I'm not going to talk about anything with the plot with this book, what it's about, anything at all. Like, I don't want to spoil a single thing. The characters were just really going through it, and I just feel like we started to sort of get dragged through the mud for getting dragged through the mud's sake, and I feel like we sort of just lost the plot a little bit with this one. Once again, I still really liked this. There were still really great moments, but I think that these books are just so long and there's so many of them, and I just started to get exhausted and I felt like things were kind of repetitive. So this was not my favorite in the series, but I still did really enjoy it. And then we have the 7th book, Heartless Sky. I actually gave this 3 stars. This is my lowest rated book in the series, and that might be it just suffers from being the most recent release. This is a huge book. It is once again just crazy things are happening, and I just felt that if I look at the entire series, at the overarching plot, I just feel like things just started to get a little crazy. We were grasping at straws here. We are extending this series for what reason? I am not entirely sure. I do stand by my statement. I think that this series should be shorter. Like, I think that they should have cut some things out, shortened the books, something, because this book just felt like it was just pain. I did like it though. Once again, I don't want to sound like I don't like this series, because overall it is an addicting and fun series and I loved reading it, but this was just a lot. This was emotionally taxing for me to read, but I'm done with the Zodiac Academy series for now, and then the last book comes out in December, which I am excited for and I will definitely be picking up. Okay, the next book that I read in the month of May was Hollowpox by Jessica Townsend. So this is the 3rd book in the Nevermore series, which is a middle grade series following our main character. Her name is Morgan Crow. Morgan Crow was destined to die on her 11th birthday because she was cursed, but then a man named Jupiter North came and took her to this magical world called Nevermore. We find out that she's destined for much greater. So this is the 3rd book in the series. Once again, I'm not really gonna go too much into the plot, but I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I do still think that the 2nd book is my favorite, but I really liked this. I wouldn't say that there was anything particularly unlikable about this book or anything. It just didn't give me that 5-star feel, but we did get to see Morgan a lot more in like the academic sort of setting and the academy that she's at, which I really enjoy. So I really did like this one. I'm really excited because the 4th book is coming out in the fall and I cannot wait to see where the series goes. I believe there's going to be 9 books and I cannot wait. And I also buddy read this with my friend Kara from Kara's Bookshelf, and I believe that she also gave this 4 or 5 stars. Overall, very successful read and a great installment in the series. All right, and speaking of Kara, once again, the next book that I read in the month of May was The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. So Kara and I decided to film a collab this month, and basically what we did was we sent each other books and neither of us knew what we were sending, and so we opened them on camera and read them for a reading vlog. This is the book that she sent me and it was so good. This is such a good book, you guys. I'm not a historical fiction person. I like literary fiction to a point. I'm not crazy about it, but this was beautiful. I did give it 4 stars, but even, you know, I talked about this with Kara a little bit, like there's nothing wrong with this book. Like, it is a 5-star book, but it just didn't give me that like favorite of all time 5-star feeling. So I think I am going to stick with my 4-star rating, but this is a beautiful beautiful story. So this follows Roya and Bahman. It's a dual timeline story. Roya and Bahman met in 1950s Iran during sort of the political uprisings. They have this sort of sweet love story, and then for whatever reason, they are separated. They are no longer together. We know this because at the beginning of the novel, Roya is meeting up with Bahman after like 50 years of not seeing him. So we're kind of trying to piece together what happened between them. It is a very sad, beautiful, tragic love affair, and I was so touched by this book. The writing is incredible. I was inspired to annotate by the beautiful quotes, and the book is just like gorgeous anyway. So thank you, Kara, once again for sending this to me, and I highly recommend if you like historical fiction, even if you don't. Like I said, I'm not a historical fiction person, but this book was just beautiful. All right, let's just get this one out of the way. I have a vlog for this. You guys should really go watch this vlog. I go into details about my feelings for this book, but if we think back, I believe in my May TBR, I started the video with my #1 for sure book that I'm going to read in the month of May is Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and if that's the only book I read, I will have a great month. Yeah, well, I read this book and I gave it 2 stars. This is my biggest disappointment of 2022. This was my second most anticipated book, right behind House of Sky and Breath. I feel like, you know, depending on the day, depending on my mood, this could have been even more anticipated than House of Sky and Breath. This broke my heart, literally. I'm sure you guys know about this book, but it follows Charlie and Nora, kind of. Follows Nora Stevens, and she is a literary agent living in New York City. She's sort of this workaholic type, and she goes to this small town in North Carolina with her sister to kind of work on their relationship. And then there is in my opinion, subplot of romance with Charlie Lastra, who is a book editor in New York City. He also ends up in this small town as well, and their story unfolds from there. Once again, I have a vlog. I talked at length about my feelings, but this is literally my most disappointing read of the year. I am so sad. It will probably be on like my worst books of 2022 list just because of how disappointed I was, and I just did not like the story at all. It totally fell flat for me. It stabbed me in the heart over and over and over again. So that is Book Lovers. And then in that same vlog, I did read Book of Night by Holly Black. This was also a 2-star. It was a 2-star vlog, apparently. 2 highly anticipated releases that ended up definitely disappointing me. So with Holly Black, the Folk of the Air series is definitely like my favorite YA fantasy series. I love Holly Black's writing. I also really like the Spiderwick Chronicles, which is her like children's / middle grade, I'm not quite sure where that falls, but series that she co-wrote. And so I was excited for her adult debut, you know, and I wasn't expecting it to be like the Folk of the Air series. I knew that I shouldn't go into it thinking that because I would be disappointed, but I was disappointed anyway. I set my bar so low for walking into this book, and I don't know, you guys. I found nothing to be excited about with this book. I really don't even think there's anything super positive that I can say about it. I don't think anything stuck out as being terrible. I'm just like, this book isn't good to me. Like I don't know. I'm very, very lost at how I feel about this book because, and just kind of how I feel about Holly Black. I mean, I still love the Folk of the Air series. I still love the Spiderwick Chronicles, but this honestly just felt so different. And I feel like I didn't really find Holly's voice in the book because even though this is going to be different than the Folk of the Air and Spiderwick Chronicles, I still feel like you should be able to hear, read, see, whatever, her voice. And I don't know, I just didn't. It felt so like out of left field. And I was just incredibly disappointed by this. I could go into the synopsis, but I'm telling you, like, I don't even know how to describe this book. It doesn't really make any sense to me. There is a girl named Charlie. Oh my god, we have 2 Charlies in the same vlog, and they disappointed me. That must be like a bad name for me or something. But Charlie Hall, I believe her name is. In this world, there is such a thing as shadow magic. Charlie, I believed, lived some type of life of crime involving shadow magic. She tries to stay on the straight and narrow, but the people that she has involved herself with kind of reel her back in. I think, even after finishing this book, I can't quite grasp the full plot. Like, I can't even find anything good to say about this. I know that that's like harsh, but there's nothing that I really take from this book that is positive, unfortunately. All right, the next 3 books that I read in the month of May are The Assassin's Blade, Throne of Glass, and Crown of Midnight. You guys know I've talked about this many times. I am rereading this series with my friend Zahar, and we wanted to read the first 3 books in the series in the month of May, just because the next few books are obviously very long, and we wanted to sort of bulk up on the shorter books first. So we got these first 3 books done in the month of May, and oh my god, I'm in love with the series. It's everything to me. This series means so much to me. These books, these characters are a part of me. They helped me find myself and find my passion, and they reignited my love for reading along with like many other books, but these sort of just solidified that reading is so powerful and important to me, and it's where I feel the most like myself. And this series, once again, I talked about it with the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, but it feels like coming home. It's so comforting, and I just feel like so lucky to be able to connect to a series so well in this way. It like touches me real deep in the feels. I loved it. I read The Assassin's Blade first, which I 10 out of 10 recommend whether you have read the series or not. If you're going to reread it, if you're going to read it for the first time, please read The Assassin's Blade first. I know that it was published after Throne of Glass. However, the events that happen in The Assassin's Blade, which by the way, this is like a bind up of 5 novellas that predate the events of Throne of Glass. The first time I read the series, I read this, I believe, after Crown of Midnight and in between Heir of Fire, and it was like, fine, whatever. This needs to be read before Throne of Glass. There are so many connections, and even like there's the obvious ones that if you've read the series, you know, like the things that happen in later books that connect to things that happen here, but there's even those small connections that you will totally miss out on in Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight if you do not read this first. It is a great way to get to know Celaena's character. It is just, I can't recommend it enough. Please read The Assassin's Blade first if you're going to read this series. It is going to be so satisfying and so gratifying for you, and you will understand why you should read this first after you've read it. Like, it's just, I can't, if there's one thing you take from this video, please read The Assassin's Blade first, please. Like, I can't believe I ever read it in the order that I read it the first time. Like, I totally missed out on so many emotional, deep connections, which get you further invested in the story. And also, like, it's just 5 like short novellas. I feel like it's a really good, like, quick way to kind of start the series and gets you motivated to start the next 7 books. So yeah, I loved this book. I believe I gave it 4 stars the first time around, but I gave it 5 stars this time around. I do think that me reading this first did increase my overall rating, because when I read it, as I said, I read it in between Crown of Midnight and Heir of Fire, which was recommended to me, I believe, on like Reddit or something. And I was so, like, you guys know, if you've read it, you know how Crown of Midnight ends, and like the differences between Crown of Midnight and Heir of Fire are huge, and like it's kind of where the story takes a turn. So having to pause and read this was not a great experience the first time I read the series, because it does like take you back. So I just think for you to chronologically follow Celaena's life, you need to read this first, and the rest of the series will be so gratifying. So yeah, this is a 5-star. I absolutely loved it. Throne of Glass, I believe I also gave 4 stars to the first time around, but I gave it 5 stars this time around. I loved it. It is so just like nostalgic and sweet and innocent, and I'm just like, oh, you poor babies, you have no idea what you're about to get into. And then Crown of Midnight, I did give this 5 stars the first time around, and I give it 5 stars again. I love this book. I really think this is like an underrated book in the series. It's not my favorite, for sure. I really appreciate some of the things that happened in this book and the characters, and even though I'm not rooting for the romance in this book, it was cute, it was sweet, and like it had its moments. So I love this book as well. Okay, so the next book that I read in May is Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. I was not planning on picking up this book this month. I just felt inspired to one day. I was just thinking about it, and I was like, I just want to read that book, because I think I saw some people on Book Talk talking about it. I bought it a while ago and figured, oh, I'll get to it, but I don't know. One day I just woke up and I was like, I want to read it. I read this book in one sitting. I annotated the crap out of this book. I don't even know how to talk about this book. Like, really, I don't. First of all, I just want to say, before I even get started with this like wrap up for this book, there is a ton of nuance to this book, and I think that there's a ton of nuance to my overall rating, and I think a lot of people's overall reviews and ratings of this book. So number 1, if you're going to read this book, be open-minded and expect nuance, expect to have conflicting opinions, and that's okay, and that like multiple things can be true within this book. And I don't know, first of all, I want to say I loved this book. I loved this book so much. The number 1 thing I loved about this book is the writing is insane. And I can't convey enough how incredible the writing is. The writing is 5 stars. This might be the most beautifully written book I have ever read in my life. It was literally like you guys can see, like this is all just like beautiful writing, basically, are all of these tabs. This book was gorgeous. Like, the writing is a work work of art. Olivia Blake is such an amazing author, and like her prose is fantastic. So when I first finished this book, I did give it 5 stars because I was so like knocked down by the writing. It was so good. But then I did end up lowering my rating to 4 stars, which is still great. I still love it. But I think that there are, you know, some valuable criticisms of the story that I'm like, well, I kind of agree with that. You know, I'll lower my rating because I do agree. If you don't know what this book is about, it's not a romance, I would say entirely. I think it straddles the line of romance and literary fiction. So this follows 2 characters, Aldo and Reagan. Aldo, I believe, is he might be like a PhD student, but he is also either a teacher's assistant or a professor at university, and he studies like time travel, astrophysicist, you know, that type of person, very into math, and he also struggles with depression. Reagan is, she's currently working at the Art Institute of Chicago. She gives tours, she talks about the art, and she also has been diagnosed with a behavioral mood disorder, and she also committed, I forget exactly what it was, but some type of like counterfeit crime, and she now is part of her like sentencing is seeing a psychotherapist, but they both struggle with mental illness, and they meet at the Art Institute of Chicago, and there is like an electric connection between them. Like they are incredibly drawn to each other. It's a really, really amazing moment when they meet. And then they decide that they are going to start to get to know each other. They say like, let's have 6 conversations or whatever. And so they start to slowly get to know each other and fall in love. And it's such like, I don't even know, you guys. Like the love story is beautiful, but there are problems with it too. The love story had some really, really beautiful aspects. The way that Aldo and Reagan speak about each other is gorgeous. It's Shakespearean, like it's amazing. However, there are some criticisms of the relationship which I think are valid to bring up. There is some codependency happening. There is some enabling happening, right? I'm not necessarily saying that that is like horrible or great or whatever. I'm just saying I definitely recognized that as I was reading the story, and I sort of just read it and enjoyed it and took it for what it was, and I'm not passing like judgment on the relationship, but there's definitely like some issues between them, you know, and as I said, mental illness is a huge part of this story. So that plays a part kind of in how their relationship is shaped. I will say though, there's really, really a beautiful focus on Aldo in particular when he talks about Reagan. He is enamored and loves the way that her brain works. And as somebody who was diagnosed with a mental illness, I just think that that is a really lovely thing to say about someone, because sometimes it can be so hard. You struggle with your mental illness, you work at it, and it's a lifelong thing. You try to do what you can to be, happy and, functioning and all of that. And I just so appreciate that we had a love story where he's like, I love the way that your brain works. I think it's beautiful. I'm enamored by the way that you see the world. And I love that. I think it's a great celebration. I will say that once again, nuance, there is definitely some codependency happening in the relationship, and there were some unhealthy things that happened between them. But overall, I think it's a really beautiful story. At the same time, I don't know. I feel so many things about this book, and I think that it is a gorgeous, as I said, the writing is incredible. I think it's a very valuable story. It's beautiful, and it is the most epic love story of all time at some times. And then at other points, you're like, oh gosh, this is sad, and my heart breaks for these characters. And these might not be the most healthy coping mechanisms. I loved this book. I really, really appreciated it. I literally was like saying out loud, oh my God, some of the writing, because the quotes are beautiful. Like there's so many, just like, tattoo this book on my body, honestly. But there's just some things about it that I'm like, that's a fair criticism, and I agree. That's my overall feelings, but I did really like this book. I do recommend it. I just say go into it open-minded because it was a really, really interesting read. Okay, so the next 2 books that I read in the month of May. So I am participating in Sahar's Fantasy Romance Book Club, her fan wrote book club, and this month we read Guild by Raven Kennedy. So for Sahar's book club, she kind of picks fantasy romance series, and then we read 1 book per month. We read Guild in the month of May, and then the second book in the month of June, and so on and so forth. I did actually end up reading the second book this month because I loved this book. This is such a good fantasy romance series, you guys. I can't stress it enough. If you enjoy fantasy romance, you really, really need to give this book a shot. I was so surprised at how much I liked it. I was very nervous to try this. If you've heard heard about this book, I'm sure you've heard about the talk of the intense trigger warnings with this book, and I also want to like make it super clear. Please check trigger warnings before you dive into this book because there are some very intense scenes. But overall, this was so good. I am obsessed with our main character. Her name is Oren or Aren. It might be Aren actually. Yeah, I think it's Aren. I'm gonna call her Aren. So this is a King Midas retelling. Basically, our main character, Aren, she has been touched by King Midas and she is gold. Her hair is gold, her body is gold, everything about her is gold. And she is kept in this gilded cage in the king's castle. And she kind of has a very complex relationship with King Midas. Our story starts with Aren learning about her. Then some sort of like political things happen between the different kingdoms and Aren has to leave the castle. I'm just going to leave it at that. There's so much more, but like I really don't want to spoil anything for you because I loved knowing little to nothing about going into this series. That is basically all I knew and I had such a good time. I first of all loved Aren as a main character. She was really funny and she had this sort of just like optimism and strength within her that I really appreciated. This book, it doesn't have like the most epic, intense fantasy novel plot. I would say it's definitely sort of like getting you used to the world and the characters and sort of the dynamics between people, but there are definitely some like major action scenes that happen at the end of this book and we're kind of left on a cliffhanger. I really liked this. I gave it 4 stars, but let's talk about the trigger warnings. I'm obviously not going to go into detail at all. I am somebody who is pretty sensitive to sexual assault in books, so I was very nervous to read this. However, I just want to say this, if you are also sensitive to that, but you are curious about this, I do just want to say there is one scene and it's in one chapter and it is very clearly defined. I skipped it completely. I saw that it was coming. I realized it was coming. I was like, yep, it's here. Okay. And I just skip. And I would sort of just, you know, jump in every now and then just to check and see if it was over. And then when it was over, it was fine. And you know what? My enjoyment of the book was not deterred at all. I was able to do that. I totally understand if you're like, absolutely not. I don't even want to come anywhere near that. That is totally fair. But I just wanted to provide that to someone because sometimes when it comes to trigger warnings, I kind of like to know like, well, how bad is it? How descriptive is it? Is it repeated? Is it all of those different factors? And I just wanted to let you guys know that if you are somebody like me who's just a little bit sensitive to that type of thing, it is skippable. So just something to be aware of. I will also say there is sort of, while there is only one graphic scene, there is the threat of sexual assault repeated to like multiple characters verbally. Just be aware, it's sort of a theme throughout the book, but there is only actually one graphic scene that depicts that. I just wanted to say that because sometimes people, you know, don't really say how bad is it, and I don't think that's a spoiler. It's not going to ruin your enjoyment of the series at all if you know that, because I do love this series, but I was really hesitant to pick it up, and I'm really glad that I did, and I'm really glad that I was able to skip through that section and not feel like it ruined the book for me. So because I loved Gild so much, I enjoyed it so much, I was so impressed with the writing and the character and the world and everything, I was supposed to wait until June to read this book, so I'm sorry, Sahar, but I did go ahead and pick up Glint, the second book in the series, right after. It's really short, and I got through the audiobook so quickly, so I feel like that's why I could justify it in my mind. I was like, I'm just gonna squeeze this in. I just have to know what happens. This book, not really gonna say anything that happens with the plot because I don't want to spoil anything. Once again, this book is, I would say that this book has even less of a plot. I mean, there's political things going on, you know, there's sort of some, we're making plans, we are learning about different kingdoms kind of from a different perspective, but I would say this book is about character growth and character development. This is a character-driven book, which I love. I love character-driven stories, okay? This is definitely about a mindset shift for one of our main characters and kind of how they're going to view their life and how they're going to interact with certain people moving forward and just some growth. And I really appreciated that. We do sort of start to see the beginnings of a love story, the love interest in this book, but they are still not together in this book, which is great. Like, you know, I really appreciate that we are at the end of book 2 and our main character is not like tied up with anyone yet. So I like that. I love a slow burn, and that makes me really excited for the next book. I really enjoyed this. I will just say though, the plot is light, but the vibes are good, and I really liked watching one of our main characters have a lot of growth and get out of this fog that they have been in for a while. All right, and then at the end of the month, I did a 24-hour readathon fantasy romance edition with my friends, and I did read Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight during that readathon, but I also read 2 more books. I read this graphic novel, Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling. I gave this 3 stars. It was fine. Like, I don't hate it. I don't love it. It was like a totally average experience. I talked about this in my vlog. A lot of people say this kind of feels like a setup for the actual plot, and I would agree. We got introduced to characters. I'm still kind of confused about why some characters characters were included. There were a lot of people in this book, but I did like Hades and Persephone, the moments where it was just them. I thought those were sweet, and I'm looking forward to reading the next volume. I don't think I will like rush out to get it, but I did enjoy this, and I could see myself picking up the next volume in the future. And the other book that I read during that 24-hour readathon was Pestilence by Laura Thalassa. This is the first book in the Four Horsemen series. I loved this. This was so much fun. This I gave 4 stars to, and I just feel like this was such a like just good, unexpected, fun time. So this story follows one of the Four Horsemen, Pestilence, on Earth as man, and he is like running around Canada and the world spreading the plague. Our main character's name is Sarah Burns. She's a firefighter, and she and some of her coworkers decide they're going to draw straws who's going to stay in town, because pretty much everyone has deserted town, and who's going to stay and try to kill Pestilence. They want to try to save their town and the world. So Sarah draws the shortest straw. She has to stay. She attempts to kill Pestilence when he rides through town, but she soon discovers that he is not able to be killed because, like, obviously he's one of the Four Horsemen. So he takes her as his prisoner because he's pissed. You know, obviously she tried to kill him, and she basically like tortured him, making several attempts to try to kill him, and he's like, I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to keep you as my prisoner and torture you because that is what you did to me. So they are enemies for sure. They hate each other. Sarah is, you know, trying to constantly get away from him, and he keeps bringing her back always. Then slowly they start to warm up to each other and end up falling for each other, and it is a fun time. My favorite thing about this book was that Pestilence, you know, while Sarah obviously has some growth and looks at Pestilence and sees him in sort of these complex ways and realizes that, you know, he's not one-dimensional. He's not just like this killing machine. He definitely has facets to him. Pestilence also kind of learns about humanity and the world and like human desire and pleasure and things like that. And I think that's really cool. And he's just so like, I talked about it in the vlog again, I keep mentioning that, but it's like Tarzan and Jane. Like, he doesn't understand food. He doesn't understand like, why would you eat something, you know, just for pleasure and blah, blah, blah. And so Sarah sort of introduces him to this world, and he definitely kind of becomes more rounded out as a character. So I really liked their dynamic. I thought this was super fun. There are 3 more books in the series, and I will absolutely be picking them up. Okay, and then the last book, I'm actually not done with it yet, but I don't have time to finish it before I had to film this, just with my schedule. I had to film this today, right now, and I am going to finish this book before June 1st, but I just needed to talk about it because I don't know when else I'll be able to talk about it. I am over 50% done, and I'm absolutely loving it. I feel like it's gonna be a 5-star, and that is Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellafleur. This is a sapphic romance. We have fake dating. We have like mild enemies to lovers. They're not really enemies. They just sort of get off on the wrong foot and then end up getting into a fake dating situation to appease both of their families. You guys, this is a breath of fresh air. I was like, thank you. Finally, someone is writing a good freaking rom-com. Like, this is just pure rom-com happy vibes. I'm loving this. I'm having so much fun with this book. I literally, like, I feel so refreshed. I feel like I haven't had too much luck with sort of contemporary romances and rom-coms this year. I've been having a lot of like average experiences, or with book lovers, just horrendous experiences. But this was just like, it's so good, you guys. I love it. I love the 2 characters. I think Darcy is my favorite. I love how she is a Capricorn and she's such a Capricorn. Astrology is a really big part of this book, which is super fun. And to live in Seattle, which is awesome. And literally like every place that they mention I've been to, I live near, and I'm just like, oh my god, this is so cool for me to read about. And I'm just loving their dynamic. It's really cute. There is a lot of tension between them, which is really good and like palpable from the beginning. And please pick this up. This is like such a joy to read. I'm loving it so much, and I'm so excited. I'm definitely going to pick up the other books in the series. I believe they're just like companion novels following other characters in this world, and I'm in love with it. I will put like my final rating for the book somewhere in this video, unless something horrendous happens at the end. I do think I'm gonna give it 4 or 5 stars. It feels like a 5-star though. It feels like this could be one of, if not my favorite romance of the year. All right guys, so that is it for my May wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you made it to this point in the video, go ahead and leave the stack of books emoji. Before you go, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe for bookish content from me every single week. I also have my Instagram and my Goodreads linked down below so you guys can follow me on there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are having an amazing day, and I will catch you guys in the next one.